Warning, do not listen to this podcast if hearing about freedom and liberty is not legal for you in your community. And if so, you should immediately move to a hipper community.
Welcome to the Freedom Fiends Podcast, a weekly web lab where Michael W. Dean and Neema Vedadi cover the punk rockinist, hip-hopinist current events, as well as timeless universal truths about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, because there's no such thing as half-free. The Freedom Fiends Podcast, available from freedomfiends.com. That's freedomfeens.com.
Freedom Fiends is proudly syndicated by Alterati.com and the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
Rolling.
Freedom Fiends.
That's what it is. Hey, Michael, how you doing?
Hey, I'm good. Neema Vedadi, what's up? How was your Christmas?
Christmas was awesome. I had to actually work on Christmas Day for a few hours, so that wasn't great. But I woke up early, had Christmas breakfast with the wife, opened some gifts, got a lot of great gifts that'll help me to defend freedom with all my might. How about you, Michael?
Christmas was uneventful.
Uneventful, huh? That's no good. It
Yeah,
should
it
be an
is.
event.
Nah,
is it?
I don't like
Why?
Christmas. I don't like it.
You don't like Christmas?
That's not like I'm the Grinch, man. I just, I actually wanted to call this episode, I was thinking about calling it, Will This Infernal Year Never End? Because this time of year, I like interacting with other people 24/7. I like doing business. I like getting stuff out in the world. And the last couple weeks of the year, people just go to sleep or, go into a turkey coma.
Okay. So you don't like Christmas because everything sort of stops. You can't
The bank's not
business
open.
done.
The post
Yeah.
office isn't open. UPS is twice as much. No one's online. Yeah, I don't dig it.
Okay. I can see that. I don't know. Maybe it's the kid in me. Maybe it's because I'm still a little younger. I love waking up and being excited about presents. I got some new badass headphones. Ones with a flat response. They're not Beats by Dre. There's some nice headphones they're isolating too. So hopefully you won't be able to hear my echo on the cast, but they'll help me to mix audio and do all sorts of great stuff. My wife got me this poster. It was a British piece of propaganda, I guess, from World War II or maybe World War I. It says, "Freedom is in peril. Defend it with all your might." And it just looks awesome. I hung it up in my little studio here, so it'll help keep me on track that now I'm using the evil government propaganda to fight for freedom.
That's timely because today's cast is called Brave New Libertarian World, and we're going to talk about the movie and the story Brave New World, which is British and contains propaganda or may even be propaganda, which is a theory I have we'll discuss.
You think it may be itself propaganda?
Yeah, of getting people ready for the Brave New World.
Ah.
Because the author was a socialist, and the author of Animal Farm was a socialist. They're both socialists, so it's weird that they would both write these tales of dystopian, this is what it may come to if you don't act on it. I mean, I think it's kind of, hey, embrace this.
I don't know if maybe Brave New World. I could maybe see that argument. I really don't see it with 1984. I know he was technically considered a socialist, Eric Blair, also known as George Orwell. But I mean, that was at an age when really the only two mainstream alternatives were you're either a fascist or you were a socialist. It's kind of like today where you're either a Democrat or a Republican.
Yeah.
So he wasn't radical in the sense that he said, I'm an anarchist. But, I think when you read 1984, you really get a sense that these are the perils of government planning.
Well, both Orwell, who wrote Animal Farm,
and
right?
1984. Yeah, Orwell wrote 1984 and Animal Farm.
Brave New World was written by
Aldous Huxley.
Aldous Huxley, who also wrote the book Doors of Perception, which is about his experiments with mescaline, and the band The Doors takes their name from that book.
Huh. No, I didn't know that.
He said in the book, mescaline cleanses the doors to perception. Jim Morrison liked Huxley and named his band The Doors after that book.
Right. Well, in Brave New World, drugs are used as a tool. He sort of foresaw that science would see drugs as a way to control the populace. And
yeah, the drug SOPA, which is their recreational drug, which is almost mandated by law that you take it. Interesting, though, in Brave New World, not a lot is actually mandated by law. You rarely see it's all horizontal enforcement.
Yes, it's all horizontal enforcement. In the book, I don't remember any violence. In the movie, I watched the 90s version of the movie. The only time you see a gun is the pilot of the helicopter when they crash in the reservation. Because in the world, they have reservation for the people who didn't want to become part of the planned society. And when they crash, the pilot uses his gun to defend them against some of the quote-unquote savages.
Well, an interesting thing, I watched both movies, the 90s version, which you watched, and the 80s version, which was produced by the BBC. In the 90s version, the reservation, where the brutish people who aren't enlightened in part of the society live, is filmed in the Conejo Valley, which is where I used to live in California. And in the 80s version, the brutish outland is filmed in Wyoming. So I live in and have lived in places that are depicted as the raw, uncivilized world in both of those movies.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, Wyoming would be the reservation if this were true, wouldn't it? I think it would be.
Yep.
But yeah, I thought the 90s version really did fit perfectly the way I envisioned it. More so because, the 90s was sort of a decade where the attitude was, hey, we're better than the other decades. We're sort of more enlightened now. There's a clip you can watch on YouTube where it's like everybody's popular quotes about the 90s and everybody's like, oh, come on, it's the 90s. You didn't really hear that in the aughts, I think, just because you can't really say, I mean, what are you going to say? Oh, it's the 2000 zeros, or it's the aughts. And so I think in the 90s, they had this attitude, and then it was also all about pleasure. It was really carefree, and that's sort of the idea of Brave New World, is people would just be entertained into submission. They wouldn't be forced into submission. They just wouldn't care. Everything would be about, like one of the slogans is, promiscuity is every citizen's duty. Yeah. So it would all be about fun and sexual freedom and not caring about anything else but your own pleasure.
I like how in the 90s one that you saw, the savages are portrayed as wiggas with guns who listen to hip-hop.
Yeah, they lived in trailers. They were sort of white trashish, yeah.
Yeah, California white trash. The hero, John Savage, in... Oh, my alarm's going off. Time to get up and podcast. Okay. The hero in the 80s one looks a lot like me at age 30. The 1 month I grew a beard.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You had a beard?
Yep.
Ah, interesting. I'd like to see that picture.
I don't know if I still have it. But yeah, I had a beard for 1 month, and I dyed my hair black once. Other than that, I just kind of look like I look. So yeah, I mean, I've always loved this genre of movies, of like not too distant future dystopian books and movies ever since I was a kid.
Right. The thing that, and maybe there's something to your earlier point here about how you think Brave New World might have been propaganda itself. I don't think the world of Brave New World could exist, at least as it does there. It's too good of a world. I don't think they could ever get that far with central planning.
It's actually, Brave New World is much more of a feel-good hit, if you could call it that, than 1984. In 1984... the guy who doesn't like the government is tortured out of his mind. And in Brave New World, the guy who doesn't like the government is like put up by the state in a wonderful little island paradise as a punishment.
Right. Although in the movie, he falls off a cliff and dies.
In the book, he hangs himself. He should have just grabbed a girl. I mean, they probably would have given him one of the more willful betas.
One of the deltas?
Yeah.
They would have given him 10 deltas.
It could have been paradise,
Yeah.
Would have been paradise for me.
Right.
But
well, I think there's a lot more economic awareness in 1984. I mean, in 1984, there's shortages all the time. The government's always lying about the chocolate rations. Even though the people have less chocolate, the news reports say, and in other news, chocolate production increased by 50%. Yeah. In Brave New World, everything seems to run well. It seems to work. And I don't think that would ever actually happen.
If you're an alpha, life's pretty good in Brave New World.
Right. Well, also in 1984, if you were a member of the inner party, life was good too.
Well, that's true everywhere. I mean, communist Russia, which, I think that all of these stories are kind of foretelling what they thought the USSR would be, not what England would be, where they were writing them.
Possibly, yeah. The other thing...
Animal Farm, definitely. Animal Farm, like, everything in it is a parable for the USSR.
I think Orwell was very scared of the USSR, and I think his point was that's what would happen if socialism or this idea does take over the world. The thing that I also want to mention, because I did see the 90s version of Brave New World, that's what the 90s seemed like to me. It was definitely more Brave New World. I think after 9/11, things were a lot more 1984. And I think that's because in 1984, the way they keep the masses in line is war. It's the 2 minutes hate. It's hating the other. It's you have to sacrifice because we're always at war with East Asia, and Eurasia has always been our ally. And then they switch, and the people they don't skip a beat mentally. There's always that other that we're always fighting. They were in perpetual war, and that's what kept people in line. In the 90s, we did have that perpetual war in the sense that, America's always sort of been imperialist, but it wasn't in the forefront. It was more about entertainment and making yourself happy.
You're listening to the Freedom Fiends podcast, available from freedomfiends.com. That's FREEDOMFEENS.com.
A lot of things are happening right now that make it look like regular citizens are going to become watched as terrorists or hassled by the government. The first person I knew that happened like a couple months after 9/11. It was this cafe in San Diego, at San Diego State, on the campus. There was this worker-run, commie coffee shop called the Shea Cafe, like Che Guevara.
Right.
The Shea Cafe. And I actually showed my movie, DIY or Die, How to Survive as an Independent Artist there, and had a really good showing of it. About 100 people, and it was really well attended, good Q&A, good energy. But I was talking to the people who ran the place, and they said that, don't be surprised if the Fed goons show up. I don't think they called them that. They said people from the government show up, because they'd been warned. Basically what it was on their website, they had a bunch of links to people they liked, and one of them was some South American organization that is, considered terrorist, or was at that time, by the United States government.
Uh-huh.
I don't remember which one it was, and it was one of those, like, are they freedom fighters or terrorists? Depends on which side you're funding. But,
right.
All they had was a link to them, and somebody from, I don't know if it was the FBI or what, but it was some, pre-Department of Homeland Security agency showed up there and said, like, you need to take this link off your website, or we're going to charge you with, it was like providing computer and networking to the enemy.
Ugh.
Like as if they were like running servers for them, which they weren't. They just had a link to them. And, they badgered him into taking it off. But that was my first encounter with that.
So how did they end up taking it off?
Yeah, they took it off, but they said, this happened yesterday. They might show up here today. They didn't show up as far as I know.
Right. And that was back, a decade ago?
Yeah, it was like December 2001.
Right. And of course, now the big hubbub is, the indefinite detention, and then, of course, SOPA, which a lot of people have been talking about.
We're going to talk a lot about SOPA after Brave New World, which is just, the new Brave New World. But
the other thing I noticed about the Brave New World, the 90s movie at least, is it was more of a utopia from, I guess, the progressive left. Like I said, promiscuity was held in high esteem. The family was abolished. Everybody was born in a bottle, raised in a test tube.
Everything everyone thinks Obama wants to put into place.
Right.
And he probably does.
The conditioning was very much everybody is important, and even deltas have their place.
Being alone was considered bad. Like anyone who wanted to spend any time alone was suspect.
Yes, one of their slogans was everybody belongs to everybody.
Yeah.
It was we are one mass, and anything that was considered individualistic was considered antisocial and could destabilize the whole society.
Did you ever see the movie Brazil?
No.
That's a really good dystopian movie too, but it's funny. It's kind of like Brave New World, but it's funny. Like everything is so comically broken because of central planning. I mean, it's basically like our hero in the movie, the steam pipes in his house stop working, and he contacts the government who are in charge of it, and they send people over who like wreck his house trying to fix it and still don't fix it, and then send him a bill for it.
Right.
It's pretty funny.
Kind of like Idiocracy, I think, is another comedic dystopia.
Yeah. But Huxley was a Fabian Society socialist, as was George Orwell.
Ah, okay.
Which is, which really just makes me baffled that they wrote these timeless, great dystopian things to me that look like what would be the result of Fabian socialism.
Right. Well, I mean, I don't know what their personal lives were, and really, I don't care. I think the message and the effect of both of the books, for me at least, and for a large portion of society, has been to show the horrors that can happen if people get these beautifully planned societies that they think are going to work. Even if they are fun and people have plenty and can go out shopping and have orgies like in Brave New World, then you lose all the humanity, and people in the end still aren't happy. They're only happy to the extent that they're drugged.
Well, I still don't know how a socialist ends up writing this book. I always go to the thing of like, are they looking into their crystal balls or their day planners?
That's a nice little saying there.
It was my friend Michael Woody said that about the movie, another great dystopian film that's actually somewhat based on Brave New World, is the film Demolition Man. Which, now that I've seen these two movies, I mean, Demolition Man is almost just a rewrite of Brave New World, and there's a lot of, like, homages to it. Like, the main character is Lenina Huxley. Lenina is a character in Brave New World. Huxley is the author.
Right.
They have a drug, kind of like Soma, in it. There's a lot in it that's very similar to Brave New World, but it's kind of a comedic California New Age version of it. And another interesting thing, too, is the first Brave New World film came out in 1980, and then Demolition Man came out in 93, and then the other Brave New World movie came out in 98. The other Brave New World movie, the one you saw, is influenced by Demolition Man.
How so?
In that the grand planners of the society brainwash one of the subhuman types to be a Manchurian candidate to go after the Savage and eliminate him.
Right. Well, no, in the Brave New World 98 version, he was going after the guy who brought the Savage in, Bernard Marx, he was trying to kill.
But also, I think it's influenced in that in Demolition Man and in the 1998 Brave New World, the dystopian future looks a lot like present-day Los Angeles, and in fact is present-day Los Angeles.
Yes. That was very, very noticeable.
When they create the Manchurian candidate, they delete the computer records to cover it up.
Yes, yeah. That's true, too. One of the other things that really struck me about the 98 version of Brave New World was the news was pretty much the same. The TV news was exactly the same as it existed then and it exists now. And I thought that was hilarious to me, that when you watch the news reports on Brave New World 1998, they look exactly like they would today. There was no difference in style or content or the way the stories were portrayed.
Well, also in the 1998 one that you saw, the newscaster, you never see him. He's off screen. You hear him. I'm pretty sure it's John Beard, uncredited. It absolutely sounds like John Beard, the guy that's the fake newscaster, the real newscaster who's the fake newscaster in Arrested Development.
Yeah, it very well might be. Yeah.
And another way that Demolition Man is like Brave New World, I never read the book, but that it's at least like the original movie, is that both societies have a mellow greetings type hand gesture where you don't touch, and both disdain physical contact with any emotions. Both have a savage underclass living outside of society that seems more normal to the intended viewer than the main society.
Yes.
Both have babies made in factories. Demolition Man has a character named Lenina Huxley. Both have forbidden worlds, proscribed, preset synthetic virtual reality as entertainment. Both have sex controlled. It's non-existent in Demolition Man. It's enforced with everyone in Brave New World.
Well, sex exists in virtual reality in Demolition Man. They put on those helmets and they feel like they're having sex, but they're not.
But the Brave New World, at least the movie, and I think the book and the original movie, the movie you saw, have virtual reality as entertainment and as programming.
And in the book they call it the feelies. Instead of the movies, that's what you do on Friday night. You go to the feelies. Go get felt up. Yeah.
You'll get an update of your BIOS, of your programming.
Right. Now, back to your point where you were wondering how these two socialists wrote the book and if it was their day planner or their crystal ball. I think it is important to note that in the endings of both the books and the movies, the state wins and keeps on going. The Savage falls to his death. The central planners who don't like it leave and go live on the reservation or get exiled to the island or whatever. In 1984, Winston gets a bullet in the brain because he finally loves Big Brother. And I guess the reader's left to assume that these were just the outliers that ended up dying, and the state goes on unharmed, unchanged.
Yep. Another way that Brave New World influenced Demolition Man, and I did read the book actually, but I was like 15. I read it in school. I can't remember much of it. But both have an anti-hero from the other world. In Brave New World, he's named John the Savage, or John Savage. And in Demolition Man, he's John Spartan. Spartan is kind of a savage term. Right. And both are savages that become sort of a like bon vivant rock star. Like everyone wants to meet them and study them. But then they become problematic to society. And both have the savage falling in love with a woman named Lenina.
Well, in Demolition Man, do they rectify the ending? Is there some resolution there? I don't remember how Demolition Man ends.
The ending is really kind of pussy in Hollywood in Demolition Man. It's like John Spartan defeats the evil people from the planned society, the upper echelon who are trying to ruin everything and kill him. He frees the people living in the sewer, and they're allowed to come up and live on their own terms in society. And the last line of it is he says to Dennis Leary, the guy from Underground, you need to get a little more clean. And then he says to the guy who runs the society now, and you need to get a lot more dirty. And then he kisses Lenina in a pose that resembles that famous end of World War II picture of the right. sailor kissing the nurse in the street.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a very Hollywood. I like that, though. You need to get a little more clean. You need to get a lot more dirty.
So it's a moderate's ending. Mm-hmm. There's not freedom for all, but at least he killed the evil.
Everybody compromises a little bit.
Yep. Well, I guess that's better than getting a bullet in the back of your brain or falling to your death.
Yeah. It's interesting. Orwell and Huxley were friends and talked with each other about writing these books. That kind of reminds me of another thing was the guy who wrote Moon is a Harsh Mistress. Heinlein was friends with the guy who started Scientology.
Huh. I didn't know that.
What's his name? L. Ron Hubbard.
L. Ron Hubbard.
L. Ron Hubbard was a sci-fi writer before he started Scientology.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And he and Heinlein, supposedly, this is an urban myth, but I think there's some truth to it, they had a bet of who could start a religion that would have more followers. And Heinlein just never really did anything with the bet, and L. Ron Hubbard ran with it.
Right. Maybe it was all in L. Ron Hubbard's head that there was an actual bet. Maybe Heinlein was, yeah, whatever. And L. Ron Hubbard's like, okay, I'm going to win this bet.
And now, some corporate whoring for one of our favorite products.
Hi, I'm Neema Vedadi from the Freedom Fiends Podcast, and I'm excited about Vaporsmith's electronic cigarettes. I dig the taste, and I dig the freedom to vape anywhere the nanny staters would wet their pants if I smoked.
Howdy, I'm Michael Dean of the Freedom Fiends, and I love Vaporsmiths. I smoked 3 packs of tobacco cigarettes a day for decades, but now I'm only using Vaporsmiths. I love the flavors, I don't smell like smoke, and I save money, so I have more to spend on ammo and treats for my kitties.
Vaporsmith's e-cigs revolutionize nicotine ingestion by bringing it into the 21st century. With Vaporsmiths, you'll enjoy all the invigorating nicotine with none of the nasty smoke. Vaporsmiths are clean, efficient, and tasty. Available in 3 strengths and 8 delicious flavors: Reds, Classics, Turkish, Menthol, Strawberry, Cherry, Vanilla, and Cloves. Go to Vaporsmiths.com for a free starter kit, a $39.95 value, with the purchase of 40 cartomizers or more by using coupon code FREEDOMFIEND. This is a limited time offer. Vaporsmiths.com is run by a liberty-loving entrepreneur, not some subsidized tax eater conglomerate. Vaporsmiths at Vaporsmiths.com. Vaporsmiths. I'm enjoying one right now.
What does freedom mean? Tune in to LRN.FM to find out. LRN.FM is the Liberty Radio Network, a collection of live talk radio and podcasts, all coming from a principled pro-liberty perspective. LRN.FM show hosts aren't left, right, or conspiracy kooks. You can tune in 24/7 to LRN.FM via your phone, computer, satellite, and more. Listen free anytime. at LRN.FM. That's LRN.FM.
Since time began, tyrants have taken aim at personal liberties. Now there's a movie that aims back.
The government has no more right to tell us what to put in our bodies than they have to take our guns or tell us what books we can read.
6 drug police were eaten by bears while raiding a marijuana farm.
On your knees, you dirty hippie! Jesus. On your knees! What's the problem, officer?
Today, many cops who enforce pot laws do so only because it provides them with cushy jobs, good benefits, and a chance to push people around.
I was an undercover narcotics officer. The drug war is nothing but a farce.
The Second Amendment says you gotta keep you and your gat intact.
Guns and Weed, The Road to Freedom. A film by Michael W. Dean and Neema Vedadi.
DVD available now at gunsandweed.com or on Amazon. That's gunsandweed.com. Makes the perfect gift. Remember, that's gunsandweed.com. So, what's up, my Oriental?
What's up? I'm not your alpha anymore, now I'm your Oriental.
You're my Alpha Oriental.
All right.
Well, because I learned that Oriental is still a word in Germany for people from
Persia.
Middle East. Persia. You know, the word soma is an allusion to a mythical drink of the same name consumed by the ancient Indo-Aryans, which I think is around your people.
Yeah, the ancient Indo-Aryans would have been the predecessors of the Persians, and then likely the predecessors of the Indians, too.
You know, we had some really funny hater talk on YouTube on the first chapter of the movie. I left a couple of them up if anyone wants to go look. There was somebody who said, movie looks great, but don't ever let that Indian guy near the microphone. Rap ruins a movie like this. and I said, he's not Indian, he's Persian. You're racist. You think all brown people look alike.
That's racist.
And he said, I don't care where he's from. Just because he's from Iraq doesn't mean he's different. I could still call him Asian. I'm from Scotland, and if someone calls me English, I don't care.
Really?
And,
I bet some Scotsmen would be offended if they were called English.
I'll bet. And I said, wrong again. Persian isn't Iraqi, it's Iranian. And he just started battling with me, and I blocked him. The thing about YouTube is when you block somebody, it takes about 10 or 15 minutes for the block to work.
Okay.
So he kept, like, sending hater shit, and then kept sending me instant messages like, oh, you're not talking, I guess I won. Come on, man, let's fight. And I looked at his other posts to other people, and, like, he's one of those people that, like, every conversation he has online is yelling at people.
Right. He just gets off on it. Instead of being a Scottish soccer hooligan, he's a Scottish YouTube hooligan.
A Scottish YouTube hooligan from his mother's basement in Glasgow.
Yes.
Yep. So back to Brave New World. I think there's parallels in it, too, to Soylent Green and the movie Logan's Run. Did you ever see Logan's Run?
No, I never saw Logan's Run.
Really good 70s dystopian sci-fi movie. It stars Farrah Fawcett.
Oh.
But it's another one that has, like, a world outside the planned world, and the heroes go there for some reason.
And then the heroes go native and fall in love with the...
Yeah, okay. Basically. In Logan's Run, there's a chip in your hand, and when you turn 30, it changes color, and then they kill you in this thing that's called Carousel, which is kind of like throwing the Christians to the lions. It's like entertainment for everybody. You have a perfect life until you're 30, and then they kill you.
To make room for the new people?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Huh.
That was in Brave New World, too, but it was more like when you're 70 or something, wasn't it?
Right. And then they let the kids play with balloons around the dead people laying out on the tables, at least in the movie.
Yeah.
I don't remember how it worked in the book, but...
To learn that death is a natural thing.
Yes.
Sponsored by your government.
Right, and we will harvest the organs and recapture the phosphorus, so all is well.
Yeah. Brave New World, Logan's Run, and Demolition Man all enjoy a sort of bland post-scarcity. We've talked about post-scarcity before, where, like, everybody is employed, everybody has enough of everything, no one's starving, etc. Hey, DJ, welcome home early. I'm podcasting. Love you.
Podcatting.
Yeah.
Yes.
But,
yeah, I don't think post-scarcity, I don't know, I hate to say never, but I think scarcity is reality. I don't think that we're anywhere close to a post-scarcity type of world.
Well, I think we could be if the government would get out of the way. It wouldn't have to involve the government. It would involve entrepreneurs inventing things.
Well, the thing about scarcity is I think it always exists in some way because society's demands change. What's needed and what's wanted will always change as tastes and desires change. I mean, there's always going to be the basics. I think if anything, it's like an asymptotal relationship. Scarcity might approach zero, but it will never, ever reach zero.
Yeah. Well, I think that I've talked enough about Brave New World. Have you?
I think I have. One more thing. World Controller Mustafa Maan. Doesn't he look like a 50-year-old version of Ali G in the 98 movie? He's like funny. Wearing these long African-esque robes and these like long blinging chains, and he's like just kind of chill and
yeah. You know, there's another movie I saw this week that was really good called Dead Man. It's a kind of psychedelic western done by Jim Jarmusch. Have you seen it?
No, I haven't. Dead Man?
Yeah, I'll talk about it briefly. It stars Johnny Depp. It's got like the most amazing cast ever. It's an independent movie. It's black and white. It's a western, kind of what's called a revisionist western, which a lot of the spaghetti westerns were. It's a western where like the heroes aren't the white man who conquered the Indians and treat them like shit, and all the Indians are one tribe and they don't talk about any differences between them. It's more like, you know, the Indians and the Mexicans usually more part of the heroes, and there are subtle differences between the tribes as there are in reality. But this movie stars Johnny Depp, Crispin Glover, Robert Mitchum, who was in the original, actually both versions of Cape Fear, John Hurt, Billy Bob Thornton, Iggy Pop. Iggy Pop is a cross-dressing, Bible-reading fur trader. It's pretty. And Gibby Haynes, the singer in the singer from the Butthole Surfers, as a guy getting a job at gunpoint in an alley. It's a pretty awesome movie.
All right.
And the music in the movie is all improvised by Neil Young. It's really cool. I highly recommend it.
Yeah, sounds like it has all the elements there, Michael.
Yep. But there's a character in it who's played by an actor who's in both 1984, he plays Winston Smith, and he's also in V for Vendetta, where he plays completely the opposite of Winston Smith. He plays like the dictator of England.
Right, yeah, I remember that. I remember the dictator of England was Winston Smith from the original 1984.
Yep, so go out and see Dead Man.
Yes.
It's a good movie.
I guess we have another upcoming dystopian fiction movie coming up in the form of The Hunger Games. I haven't read the book, but my wife just read the series, and she said that I would probably like it. And in that, I guess, it's a post-apocalyptic kind of thing where all the states, I guess, railed against and committed war against the central government, which I'm guessing is DC or DC-esque. And then DC or whatever the central government wins, and as punishment, they make each of the regions send 2 of their kids to compete in a battle royale to the death in a reality TV show.
Wow. Well, you know, there's another movie planned of Brave New World that I really want to see. It stars Leonardo DiCaprio, who, you know, there's a few pretty boy actors that are actually really good actors. He's one. Johnny Depp's another.
Brad Pitt?
Brad Pitt's another. I mean, you know, the best, I think, is Robert Downey Jr. But it's going to be directed by the guy who directed that 1984 commercial. What is it? The Apple one?
Yeah. We talked about this a little bit on the last cast.
Yeah.
Do you know when it's coming out?
It's listed as in progress, you know, which in the works. So who knows?
I see.
Who knows?
Who knows if it'll ever actually make it to screens then, if it's still, quote unquote, in progress.
Yeah, but that sounds really good to me, because that director, God, his name escapes me right now. What is it?
Ridley Scott?
Ridley Scott. Yeah, he directed, like, the best looking dystopian movie ever, I think. The one where it rains all the time and everyone's Asian and there's like, you know, high tech everything, but it still has graffiti all over it. Yes. I think that's an accurate vision of the future.
I think it is too. I've always loved that about all the good dystopian fiction. Also, it keeps those dirtier elements of the world and of life, because I don't think those ever go away. You'll always have some graffiti. You'll always have some stuff that doesn't look clean and pristine. Always, anywhere.
Well, my favorite telling of it is Idiocracy. It's like there are all these great machines to do everything, but the people who are smart enough to maintain them have all died off.
Right, so nobody knows what the hell to do with them. They're all too busy watching Ow My Balls.
Ouch, my balls.
And eating Carl's Jr.
Hey, I wanted to say I really like the Freedom Fiends calendar you made for me and gave me for Christmas. It's pretty awesome.
Christmas was exciting for you. You got a nice calendar.
Yeah, that was the one bit of excitement. And we're going to make them later this year to sell, but you're going to have to wait. I did a blog post. People want to go look at them. It's on libertarianpunk.com. There's also a blog post I did on michaelwdean.com this week about how to circumvent BitTorrent throttling.
Oh, I'm going to have to read that, because I don't think my BitTorrent throttles, but with my new computer, whenever I'm downloading a torrent, I don't know if my internet service provider is doing this or what, but I'm not able to surf the regular internet if my BitTorrent is open.
I don't know, man. But you can try the settings that I have. I have screenshots of all the settings on there. So I learned something interesting this week, segueing into SOPA, which sounds like a delightful Mexican food, but it's actually a horrible act being considered in Congress right now. The Stop Online Privacy Act. Sorry, that was a nice Freudian slip, because it actually will stop privacy. It's the Stop Online Piracy Act, which, like most things, it sounds good to most people, but it really isn't. It's about a lot more than stopping online piracy. It's about the Department of Justice being able to take down your website permanently no matter what, if they don't like it.
Oh, yeah, it's way too much power for any bureaucrat or for any person to have. The power to have prior restraint over the internet. A very scary thing.
An interesting thing I heard this week is that the Department of Justice, who earlier this year shut down a bunch of online poker sites, is now changing their mind to where they're going to allow and encourage online poker sites as long as they can control them. Which, to me, I mean, they charge those people with like money laundering and fraud and interstate everything, you know, with a bunch of felonies. And now they're going to make that same stuff they charge with felonies legal.
As long as they have a hand in it, because...
But that kind of really undermines, to me, anyone wanting to think any law is moral. If they can just change it a few months later to where something that used to make you go to prison now makes you pay taxes to them and it's okay. You know, what does that say about the law?
It says there is no rule of law. There's only rule of men. I mean, they can change the law to their whim because those money laundering charges, those were trumped up charges in the first place. I mean, they didn't really, to me, in my opinion, have much of a leg to stand on. But they can do things like that. They seized these people's assets. And they weren't just the people who were running the site, but people who played poker. They weren't able to access their online poker money. My father-in-law being one of them. And that was one of his few pleasures in life. He has MS, and so he can't get out and do a lot of stuff, but he loved his online poker. It was one of his favorite things, and he was able to make money out of it. He was able to pay for a cruise, for himself to go on a cruise with his wife by playing online poker, and it did not hurt anybody.
That would have been an interesting lawsuit if him and some other people who had disabilities got together and had a class action lawsuit against the DOJ, because, you know, with lawsuits like that, you have to be able to show a loss, and he could show a loss. I wonder if that could be done under the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point, because he can't make it to Vegas, so
You need to have online ramps for me to get on the internet and gamble.
Exactly. No, that's a good point. Very creative. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. Online ramps to the information superhighway. There you go.
But, yeah, so this thing, SOPA, it's really heinous. I mean, first of all, it's very vaguely written to where it would not only allow the DOJ to just completely take your website away, but also make illegal anything that was a workaround to view sites that have been where they've taken away the DNS records and the domain doesn't work. Because, see, the thing is, what they do is they control the DNS records. The United States government controls, you know, the .com, the .org, a couple other ones, definitely .gov, but citizens can't get
those. Which is very unfortunate. Very unfortunate.
Yeah. There's two ways they get people off. Well, three. They arrest them, or they make it so typing in freedomfeens.com doesn't work, and it goes to a thing that says your site's been seized by the Department of Justice. Or they go take your servers. But if your servers are like in Russia or Switzerland, they can't do anything about it. So all they can do is, you know, make the domain name not work. But there are workarounds. One is that if the server has a dedicated IP address, you can just type in http:// and then the IP address, and it should go to the site. Or so I've heard. I mean, this is just for educational purposes only. And we don't have a dedicated IP yet. That costs a lot of money. So, you know, you should still be downloading all those Freedom Fiends so you can share them on BitTorrent and by passenger pigeon, carrier pigeon.
Well, it's a good point, though. America, I guess because of the way the internet sort of evolved, the American government, like you said, has control over the DNS system. Is there a way for us all to start using something else that isn't under the control of the American government? I mean, I know there's more technical workarounds, but I mean, would it be, if there's such a systemic problem like that, is there a way when we could all just sort of use something else?
there are different ways, and people are coming up with new ones. I do want to give a shout out to this new crypto anarchism site that's looking for engineers to collaborate and is willing to pay them. It's freedomengineering.org. So check that out and talk to those people. But basically, the SOPA, the person who came up with it was a Texas Republican. He's this Texas Republican that Hollywood loves because he loves to put in laws that'll control people and make more of a monopoly for Hollywood.
Of course. Mm-hmm.
I mean, basically, all of the movie and music companies are into this law, and all of the internet companies oppose it. Now, GoDaddy, the domain register, was into it, and so many people started leaving them because of it that they've said, oh, we're not into it now, which to me, you should leave them anyway. I mean, that's just putting on a different hat doesn't change what's in your head.
Exactly.
And you could go to freedomfiends.com. Over on the right side, there's a link to DreamHost that if you click on it and sign up, you'll get a little discount.
Right, and DreamHost are good people, and there's people in there that are freedom lovers as well, so.
Yep.
You're listening to the Freedom Fiends podcast. Freedom Fiends is now available for 24/7 streaming to your iPhone, Android phone, or other Chromed robot turd. Click on the streaming audio link on freedomfiends.com. That's freedomfeens.com.
So if SOPA passes, and it has total bipartisan support, I'd like to point out, though, that 60% of the people supporting it in Congress are Democrats. So anyone who thinks that Democrats are freedom-loving and want to help us, no, they want to take your internet away, man.
No. If you work for the government or in the government or a part of the government, there's no way you can love freedom. I suppose the exception might be Ron Paul and to an extent Rand Paul, but that's the only thing I can think of.
So interestingly, one of the things that's a workaround that could become illegal if this law passes is Tor, the browser, the anonymizing browser that we mentioned before that people use to access Silk Road. Mm-hmm. Now, I didn't know this about Tor. Tor was invented by the United States Navy.
Ah, okay.
There are no backdoors in it. It's been checked out by freedom-loving engineers. It's free of any backdoors for the Navy to be able to get in there. But the reason the Navy invented it was to let people in China and other repressive regimes bypass their country's informational blockades. So this thing that the United States government made to help other countries bypass internet censorship may become illegal to use to bypass America's internet censorship.
Right, so the SOPA would also make it illegal to use something like Tor then?
Yeah. It could. It's pretty vague.
Yeah, and that is another good point. Whenever they write these laws, they always write them vague so that they can be interpreted to the benefit of a prosecutor or another law enforcement agent.
It could make it illegal to run a virtual private network, which is a way to get around internet censorship, but it's not the main reason they exist. The main reason it exists, I mean, every Fortune 500 corporation in the country runs a VPN, right. So their workers out in the field can open their laptop and get into the intranet of the company without any chance of anyone seeing it in between the 2 points. Right. But that could become illegal. And actually, in Syria and some Middle Eastern countries, you have to have a license to operate a VPN for your company because it can be used to bypass censorship.
Right, and something like SOPA would open the door to where maybe that could exist, some type of licensing for a VPN. Or I guess it's a de facto licensing for the internet, because if they have the power to shut you down because you violated some vague law, in essence, you have to have their approval in order to say or do or write or post anything. This is Hillary Clinton's wet dream right here when she said there needs to be gatekeepers for the internet. I mean, I think she was thinking of something a little bit more powerful than this, but I mean, this is pretty much it.
Well, it's a slippery slope, too. And this is a pretty big fall down the slope at once. Usually they do more of a boiling frog thing where they kind of sneak it in to where you don't notice it as much. But this would be, your internet would vastly change overnight or over a period of weeks.
See, now this, though, is, a lot of Second Amendment people say, well, if the government ever did try to come and take all of our guns, that would be the last straw. But I think in today's society, taking the internet away would definitely be the last straw. I don't know, I'm not saying there'd be an armed revolution or anything like that, but the internet is so ubiquitous. Everybody, the right, the left, the middle, anybody in the world these days, if you take the internet away or make it to where people can't use it the way they have been using it, people aren't going to stand for that.
We'll see.
We'll see?
I largely think people are pussies and are all talk.
Well, at least I hope it would make people realize that the government is not your friend. They're not here to help you. I think that people would be actively seeking ways to circumvent this.
Well, that's the thing, too. It's all circumventable, but not on a major corporation level. Like, this could put Facebook and YouTube out of business, and they wouldn't be able to circumvent it because they have brick and mortar offices and companies. And, basically what this could do is could make it so if anybody uploads copyrighted material they don't have the rights for, okay, baby, see ya. Have fun at Walmart. I love you. Bye. DJ just put a note in front of me. Went to Walmart. Love you. This could make it so if anybody uploads anything to YouTube or Facebook that's not something they own the copyright to, the whole company could get shut down and the Department of Justice could just steal them and take all their assets.
Right. It's also important here to bring up, it really opens the IP debate back up as far as in the libertarian circles. I was listening to Stephen Kinsella on Stefan Molyneux's show, and he was saying, there are some libertarians who believe in IP, and to them, this doesn't sound so bad. Okay, intellectual property is still property. It's the government protecting property rights. But I don't think that's the case because you can't control something that somebody else owns.
Yeah, and even if you believe that, let's put on the minarchist hat for a minute and believe that. Even if you believe that, this is not the answer. This is so broadly written. I mean, basically, problem with a lot of internet law, well, even in the minarchist hat way, if you think there should be laws, the problem with a lot of internet law is it's written by congressmen who don't know anything about the internet.
Right.
Do you think these guys run their own Facebook page? Do you think they run their own YouTube page? They'd have no idea how to do it. They've barely been on the internet. They don't know what it is.
They think it's a series of
that
tubes.
One guy, a series of tubes, man.
And so who ends up writing it is the big media producers. It's the big studios. It's the people who are pushing for the law, the lobbyists. They end up writing the text that goes into it. So it's obviously favorable to them. And that's...
there's the guy who said a series of tubes, the Republican Alaska senator who said that, actually died recently. People are still making fun of that series of tubes comment. There's a DreamHost banner ad you can put on your website that says, go with DreamHost. Our tubes are big. And it's got a picture of tubes on the banner ad.
It's so hilarious because, nobody even knows his name or anything else he's ever done in his life, but he'll always be known for that.
I think the guy who runs GoDaddy doesn't really understand the internet. I think he's like some Texas oil billionaire or something who just bought a company and then started running it like AOL.
Right.
Because I've used GoDaddy. I used to be on them. I got out a long time ago. But recently, I helped Kofi wrest his domain away from them. And it's hard. And it's like, the site isn't intuitive. It doesn't help you do things you want to do. Instead, it just tries to charge you more for everything.
Yep. I've been on it before and have tried and realized, hey, this probably isn't the best site to use.
Whereas DreamHost is really easy to use, and they don't charge you for things that GoDaddy charges you for. Like privacy.
I think it is important here. You were saying earlier, even if you put on your minarchist cap, this isn't the way to go. I think it's really important that we rip our minarchist hats off when we're talking about this. Because if we say, yeah, you guys might have a point, but this is the wrong way to do it, then all that's going to happen, that gives them sort of carte blanche. That makes it okay for them to try some other type of regulation on it later.
I know.
I think we need to make a line in the sand and to say we won't stand for you using violence to defend this so-called intellectual property.
I thought of something interesting when we were talking last week about Free Talk Live, Ian being a full-on anarchist and Mark still being a minarchist. Right. And I'm not criticizing either of them. That's really intriguing to me because Mark spent 9 years in prison for being present at someone else's crime. I think that would make anyone not want to have anything to do with the state.
Yeah, but I don't know. Maybe we're ascribing him to something he's not. I mean, I don't think I've ever heard him full out come on and say he's a minarchist.
I thought he said he's a delegate. I think he's a Ron Paul delegate.
He may be, and I know he was in the past. I think in 2008 he says he was really involved in the Ron Paul campaign. And whenever people bring up the voting question on Free Talk Live as, I don't believe in voting, he's always the one to defend it.
Well, it's hard not to want to defend Ron Paul. I mean, he's like the only adult in a room full of children, and he kind of makes anarchists want to be delegates, I mean, I'm going to go vote for him. I don't vote, and I'm going to go vote for him. So you could call me wishy-washy or whatever, but the guy just, when he's standing up there with those other idiots, I mean, recently, who's the old guy with gray hair that's not Ron Paul?
There's a lot of people. Newt Gingrich?
Newt Gingrich is like really attacking Ron Paul right now. He originally promised not to go negative, and he's totally been attacking Ron Paul. He said something like, no freedom-loving American could possibly back Ron Paul.
Yeah, it depends on your definition of freedom, Newt. If by freedom you mean my freedom to get thrown in jail because I'm smoking a joint, then yeah, no freedom-loving American would vote for Ron Paul.
Yeah,
it's pretty disgusting the way the Republican establishment is handling the whole situation. Especially Newt, especially Mike Huckabee. You know, there was a recent thing where they were comparing Paul to Obama, and Newt was saying that, he doesn't think that it was either Newt or Huckabee was mentioning, you know, it would just be an atrocious thing for Ron Paul. The people will never vote for Ron Paul, you know, because of this whole Iran thing. And then when asked about Obama, they said, you know, he's a patriotic American. You know, it might not be the same vision of America we have, but I believe his heart's in the right place. Basically, I'm paraphrasing, but that was the sentiment. So the sentiment among some of the establishment Republicans is Obama is better than Ron Paul.
Yeah, Newt Gingrich believes that. He thinks that Ron Paul is worse than Obama. And here's the quote. He said, I think Barack Obama is very destructive to the future of the United States. And I think Ron Paul's views are similar. They're totally outside the mainstream of virtually every decent American.
See, and I just don't think that that's true.
It's
and
not.
That's his definition of decent American, because I think what he means by decent American is some type of neocon or some person who's enriched by the state. The majority of Americans don't want another war in the Middle East. They don't want war with Iran. They don't support us being in Iraq or Afghanistan. They're on Ron Paul's side when it comes to foreign policy. The majority of Americans are. The majority of Americans are on Ron Paul's side when it comes to the drug war. And to me, those are the two. That's why I can say, as an anarchist, I wouldn't feel wrong voting for Ron Paul. You know, a lot of people say, well, you can't fix the problems of the state with more state. And yes, that's true. But I think that Ron Paul would eliminate parts of the state without using the state. I think it was Gary North wrote his proposed inaugural address for Ron Paul. And it was basically Ron Paul saying, I am now effectively getting rid of every executive order.
Well, that's very similar to the acceptance speech of the governor in Moulin Labe.
Right. And so as an anarchist, I can say, yeah, I can stand behind an action that would get rid of 5 federal departments, end a war in the Middle East and really in the whole world where drones are being used to blow people up, and end the drug war that has, you know, caused so much damage and, like we said in a previous cast, is effectively terrorism. Getting rid of those state acts of violence, if there's a way to do that, I'm on board with it.
Yep.
You're listening to the Freedom Fiends podcast, available from freedomfiends.com. That's FreedomFeens.com.
I was going to say, speaking of Ron Paul, while we're on the subject, everybody seems to have weighed in on this whole Ron Paul's a racist meme. Do you want to go ahead and go there?
Well, he's not. You know, there were some things in his newsletter about 100 years ago that were racist that some volunteer slipped in there. I think I actually know who the volunteer was, and I think he's been to my house, and I didn't like him.
I think I know who you're talking about, too.
Yeah.
My whole point from this was saying that Ron Paul's a racist because of these 15, 20-year-old writings that may not even be his. I don't think they're his.
Well, they're not his. He denies them. Racists don't deny what they've said. Racists
that's
stand
a good
by
point,
it.
too. But even if you did accept that he did, to me, it is a very old needle in a haystack of evidence to the contrary. I mean, it's like saying that Alan Greenspan was a gold bug who believed in a gold standard because in 1966 he wrote a paper about gold and freedom. He may have written that in 1966, Alan Greenspan did, but then he became a Federal Reserve chairman who loved to inflate the money supply.
Well, 5 years ago I was a statist. Does that make me a statist now?
No, of course not.
And I'm on record like a lot about it. I mean, if you read my book $30 Film School, there's a lot in there about why you should try to get the government to finance your films.
Right. And so it's just ridiculous to think that he's a racist because his two main points, ending the drug war and ending the war on terror, at least those are two of his major points, are very anti-racist. They're very individualists, as well as his other points. And some people say, oh, well, he wants to get rid of affirmative action. Isn't that racist? Well, no, it's not. It grants favors on the basis of race, and it actually effectively ends up hurting people of certain certain races. Same thing with the minimum wage. Every single point he makes is to benefit the individual as opposed to any specific group.
I think that the GOP and the Obama lickers are desperate right now because Ron Paul is surging. So they're just trying to find any lie they can to defame him.
Right. And I haven't been watching the idiot box lately. I mean, does it seem to be sticking, or are people still
No, I just see a lot of it on the internet. And I've actually had discussions with a couple Obama lickers about it. And, I mean, I don't know if this is indicative of all of them, but the two I've sparred with, I mean, I tried to, show them videos of Ron Paul debunking it, and they won't even look at them. They're like, no, you're a racist too. My mind's made up.
Right.
Speaking of being portrayed as desperate, Iran is talking about blockading this canal that's half on Iran and half elsewhere.
You mean the Strait of Hormuz?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the UN is saying that, and America is saying that that would be considered an act of war. And I saw a commentator on TV today saying, well, I think this just shows that Iran is getting pretty desperate. And I'm like, desperate? And blowing people up with flying robots isn't desperate? No, that's noble. That's patriotic.
Noble. Right. It may be a little bit bothersome sometimes, but it's noble.
If you're going to say that cutting off a main conduit to commerce is an act of war, I think that description would apply to the SOPA Act.
It would apply to the SOPA Act. It also applies to our sanctions that we put on Iran and Iraq.
It also applies to the war on drugs. I think the war on drugs is an act of war then.
Well, that's not much of a debate there because they call it themselves a war. I mean, that's what it's called, the war on drugs. And of course, you can't wage war on an inanimate object, so really it's become, and has always been, a war on people who use certain drugs.
I'm reneging on my thought that regional defense in LibPar could be taken care of or should be taken care of by Google, because this week I've been trying to put some ads for Freedom Feeds on Google, and I've been dealing with their tech support. No. I take it back. They are the kludgiest, hardest to deal with tech support, or not even tech support, just, hey, I gave you money, help me out here. So, but the thing is, they're really friendly about it, but they can't get anything done for me. Pretty funny.
Yeah, that's a bummer. And again, like we've said a bunch of times, we don't have to come up with the solution for regional defense. Somebody would. Somebody who's going to make a lot of money and wants to make a lot of money would come up with a way. And also, I don't know, maybe I'm naive and maybe I am, I'll admit it, I'm an optimist. What exactly would we be defending against? What would we need to defend against in a world where everybody had decided that the state was evil and didn't want any part of it anymore?
Well, I don't know. This week it's Muslims. When I was a kid, it was Russians.
Right. Of course. The Muslims and the Russians. Okay.
Which is interesting because people who blindly, patriotically believed both of those things, which is a lot of old people in America, they believe that because of their religious beliefs, they have a duty to want to destroy us, that Muslims feel that way. And in the 60s and 70s, it was the godless Russians feel a duty because they're godless to want to destroy us. And basically the
response is that we have a duty to destroy them first.
Well, no, the subtle or not so subtle thing is only white Anglo-Saxon Protestants are the chosen people and therefore are the only ethical people. But really, a lot of what they've done isn't ethical at all.
Right.
It comes down to governments. It's all governments are bad.
Right.
Man.
I have been listening to The Bad Quaker. He brings up the point that governments are really just a fiction. This is in Heinlein, too. That there's a guy in there he calls himself a rational anarchist. And he says the state is really just, it's in our brains. It doesn't exist. It's not a physical thing. I can't go touch the state. I can't pick the state up or smell the state. It's a thing in our mind. It's a conception. All there is people. And if there are people who believe in the state and they call themselves cops, if they hit you or pepper spray you, they're just a person doing a violent act. It's not the government doing that. It's a person who believes in the government and saying, oh, well, I'm from the government, so I get to pepper spray you. So,
yep. I have a song with my band, Red Arm of Wyoming, called Government is a Collective Hallucination.
Yes, exactly. Yes. And that title of the song is exactly the point I was trying to make.
Freedom Fix.
Freedom Fix.
So I got a freedom fix. This past week, there were 2 days that had the highest gun sales ever on record in America.
Yeah. What are the media heads attributing that to now?
I don't know. The unfortunate part of it is it's according to FBI background checks.
Right.
Which, means they could take them away from you. I have a correction from last week. The name of the guy who came up with the new variation on First They Came for his last name is pronounced Mir. It's Lyle Mir.
Mir. Okay.
He says Mir rhymes with my favorite beverage, beer, or Mir like the Russian space lab.
Right.
Which is you're probably too young to remember that.
No, I know what Mir is. They taught us about it in school.
Yes,
and I have an uncle named Mir as well, so that makes sense to me.
My uncle Mir. Of course you do.
Actually, I think he's a second cousin. He's a really cool guy.
Cool.
Yeah.
So we got this audiobook going out between episodes now. We got some good feedback on that. Someone said, more fiends is good fiends. And I said, well, it's only one fiend, so it's morphine. But who doesn't like free morphine?
We all do. Free morphine. Yeah.
So I was thinking, I've been taking a lot of notes for a podcast and blog series on SEO, search engine optimization, because I've been kicking ass with it. And the cast has gotten more and more and more popular to the point where today it's the most popular it's ever been. It's got the lowest Alexa ranking, basically 2 million.
Yes.
And we're getting more downloads than ever. And so I think pretty soon here, when we hit 1 million, I think I'm going to be able to declare myself an expert and offer advice to people. So what I'm going to do is, I was going to do it as a podcast with you, but I'm thinking, first of all, you'd be kind of bored with that, because you'd just be going, and maybe cracking jokes, but it's a lot of technical stuff, and I think it'd be more than one episode, and I think I may start recording it now, because there's a lot to add to it. So what I think I'm going to do is, when the audiobook of my book is done as the between episodes cast thing, I'm going to release 3 or 4 weekly between cast episodes on search engine optimization. And I was thinking, Neema, if you want, you could also do some solo stuff to put between when
casts.
those are over.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That
kind of like how it doesn't always mean a band's breaking up when someone does a solo record. It's like, you do a solo record, then you come back to the band.
Well, that's what they say. At least that's what Andre and Big Boy said, but I've yet to see another Outkast album.
There you go.
But the Fiends aren't breaking up for the time being, at least.
No.
We're doing
great.
Michael, I think you're trying to meet the demand for the 2 casts.
Yeah.
And, once the audiobook's done, and if this SEO thing comes right after that, yeah, maybe I'll produce some of my own content to fill it in. But, as far as 2 casts go, I think one of your problems is, you'd always have to do the editing. But, I wouldn't mind editing the second cast. It might be a little bit different sounding to people, but I've been a professional editor too, so I think I could probably handle it.
You mean one that we did together?
Yeah. And then we could do 2 casts a week. I'll edit one, you edit one, and then it'll be a little bit different.
Don't start promising that.
I didn't promise. I never make a promise that I can't keep.
I'd love to see you do some solo ones too first.
Okay.
To see what you come up with.
Okay.
And they probably could be video too. I was thinking actually RSS feeds can embed video, but I don't know if that'd be really the way to do it. I think it would be better to have you do YouTube videos and then link them.
Okay.
Because who wants to download video when they're not expecting it?
Right. And that I should probably get myself a copy of a video editing program before the SOPA thing kicks us all off the internet.
Yeah.
You're listening to the Freedom Fiends Podcast, available from freedomfiends.com. That's FreedomFeens.com.
So another follow-up from last week, I was talking about Detective Munch from Law and Order,
yes.
The conspiracy nut who thinks drugs should be legal.
Of course.
He's actually, and you didn't know who that was, he's actually in an episode of Arrested Development. He plays the teacher at the Department of Justice scrapbooking sting that they used to get evidence on the family from Tobias.
Which is such a hilarious sting.
I know.
Bring us pictures of all the things your family has done. And,
I know.
Yeah.
And I like that it worked on several high-level targets, but didn't work on Martha Stewart. She made this really ornate, beautiful one that said, up yours, feds.
Right. Yeah, genius stuff. Now, I can envision Munch in my head. I think I maybe have seen him before, like when my parents were watching Special Status Victims Unit or whatever. He's sort of the tall, skinny guy, right? Yeah.
Something I didn't I forgot to bring up, which is pretty major news here, is I actually saw Atlas Shrugged this week.
Oh, the movie. How was it?
It's really good, man.
Is it?
It's on Netflix for DVD rental.
Okay.
Oh, it's also on Redbox, those rental boxes that are in supermarkets and stuff.
Right. I'm about a fourth of the way through the book right now, so I don't know if I want to jump the gun and watch the movie yet.
Well, actually, the movie only covers the first third of the book.
Oh.
It's going to be a 3-part movie series.
It's a trilogy. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll finish reading till I'm about a third of the way, and then I'll go watch the movie.
It's an awesome movie. Well done acting, directing, camera work's good. In a lot of ways, it's a very normal movie with an extraordinary story. I didn't read the book, but my wife did, and she said it's not bad. Major plot points are intact, but much of the detailed backstory is not provided, but it kind of had to be omitted to keep the film length. And I say it's still understandable if you haven't read the book. And she said, but someone who read the book will still get more out of the movie.
Right. Well, I mean, it's a really good point to make that people who have a passion to follow their own desires and their own dreams end up making things better for all of us if they're allowed to do it. Because they're allowed to progress and do something really well. And when people do things really well, we all can reap the benefits of it. If you make a new discovery that's put out in the world, you may make a lot of money off of it, yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that because you've provided such a good to society. You've made humanity as a whole better.
Well, yeah, it goes back to that thing of when I was saying that, rich people create wealth for everybody, which is kind of a Fox News attitude about it. And you corrected me, which is that everybody creates wealth for everybody.
Yes, everybody creates wealth for everybody. And those who are really good at it become rich because they're able to create that much more wealth. But it's wealth that they create generally. Now, all rich people aren't like that. There are people who get enriched at the hands of the state, people like Newt Gingrich, people who get rich off of the state and off of our backs, who aren't necessarily always the evil corporate goons. They can be, and there is crossover, but usually the people who are working off of our labor and getting money off of our backs as we're toiling are people involved in the government. They're the people who get to take Air Force One and people who get to ride around in bulletproof limos that we pay for.
How come you don't ever get haters like I do?
How come I don't get I've had my hater. I had a guy whose last name was actually Hater. No, it was Harassum. It was Harassum.
Harassum.
Right. And I don't mind calling him out on air because him. William Harassum. You can edit it out if you're scared, Michael, but I don't give a shit. He's a guy in Sheridan, Wyoming, and he hated me when I was on the news in Wyoming. He called me Fox News Light and said that I was a propagandist and that I was going to ruin society. Oh, he hated my beard.
Other than him hating your beard, I mean, he was right.
No, I'm not Fox News Light. I'm Fox.
You were on that show. You had to be.
Okay.
That's why you quit, man. So really, think about it. He was a dick, but
maybe.
You can't really argue with what he was saying.
I was able to be much more. If I was Fox News, I wasn't Fox News Light. I was Fox Business.
Yeah,
I was able to throw a good deal of libertarianism into my writing when I was at the news. I mean, not necessarily anarchism, but the way I was able to show who were the good guys and the bad guys. It was stuff I was proud to put out there most of the time. I mean, the thing when you're working at a news station is you don't always have to do that. Sometimes you have to do the fluff piece of Memorial Day or whatever.
You know what, though? You get haters sometimes. I get haters a lot. But I also get, people I know being crazy. Over half of all American serial killers have spent at least part of their life living in Southern California. Another fact, almost every person who's ever seriously pissed me off of someone I know is someone who spent a large part of their life in Northern California, specifically San Francisco. People I've known for a long time that I didn't know were crazy, turning out to be crazy. I had one of those recently. It's kind of like, what's that saying? The insane have always loved me. That's a quote from William S. Burroughs. This girl I used to know in San Francisco recently started talking to me on Facebook, and she's married, has a kid. She was talking about all these people we used to know and asking me questions about them, and I'd answer the questions, and I said something like, this is all kind of living in the past. I mean, how are you doing now? What's up now? And I sent her some of the links to our podcast, and she's like, quit trying to market to me. And then, tried to talk about stuff from 25 years ago. And I got really tired with it, and finally she started hitting on me, and I'm like, I don't like that. I gotta go. And she's a marriage counselor. which is really
And she
funny.
knows you're married, I'm guessing, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and she's married. It's like a marriage counselor hitting on somebody, which is funny because she's like state sanctioned. Like, thank God the state thinks she's worthy of doing that, because you wouldn't want an amateur doing that. But the next day I woke up and, like, I don't know if it was her other personality or if it was her husband, but there were like death threats to me in the Facebook IM stream. And then she or somebody had blocked me.
Huh. Yikes.
That's nutty. That's crazy. But, like, you know, like that has happened to me my whole life, all the time.
I don't know. Maybe I don't. I think I don't get haters because I guess I'm a little bit more laid back than you.
I never slept with this woman, by the way, too, if anyone's wondering.
I believe you. Maybe I need more haters, you know? Maybe I'm not doing enough. Maybe I need to do more so I can have more haters.
Maybe I should make a sock puppet and start sending you threatening emails.
No, I want to earn my own haters.
Okay. Hey, do you think Leela on Futurama is named after Lenina from Brave New World? Kind of like a similar character.
Because she's hot and kicks ass?
Yeah, and doesn't really like the government.
Yeah, she could be. I don't know. I mean, one of the staff writers for that show is Al Gore's, daughter or niece or something?
Yeah, Kristen.
Yeah, so I don't know how anti-state any of those writers would be. But there are some funny jokes every now and then. Like when Nixon becomes president again, and they're talking about April 15th on tax day, you can either pay your taxes or spend a day with the pain monster. Either way, you're going to have to go through some pain.
It's funny. Everybody hates taxes, but a lot of people that hate them never question the validity of them.
Yeah, it's really weird. And there's that saying, there's nothing sure in life but death and taxes. I think that was invented by some tax advocates.
By the government?
To make it seem like, you just can't avoid it. The government's going to steal your money, and that's just the way life works.
City Hall probably invented the phrase, you can't fight City Hall.
Probably.
I like in that Dead Kennedy song in Let's Lynch the Landlord, the landlord says, I'm doubling your rent because the building's condemned. You're going to help me fight City Hall.
Yeah, that's funny.
So I added Khan Academy to our list of stuff we like page.
Good. Yeah, have you ever gone on it and taken some of the quizzes?
Yeah. I like it a lot. And I said,
me and my wife do that sometimes.
Said,
we just sit around and take math quizzes on Khan Academy and see how far we can get.
I posted it on Facebook with the description, learn any subject, K through 12 and college, free, online at your own pace. And it got more shares than anything I've ever posted on Facebook. Like 65 shares.
Yeah. It's really an amazing thing. I guess the thing that makes me sad about it and shows how screwed up our current model is you couldn't really put that on a resume, could you? You can't say, I didn't go to high school, but I'm a double star in every subject on Khan Academy.
Well, you could learn it all at Khan Academy and then go take the GED.
Yeah, you could go test out of everything.
Although GED doesn't look as good on a lot of applications as a high school diploma, but it is a requirement if you don't have a high school diploma for a lot of jobs. But that's for like McDonald's or something. A lot of tech jobs and jobs where you work with your mind, it's more about meritocracy now.
Yeah.
It's leaning more that way. It should get a lot more that way. Because really, the idea of a bunch of students showing up at the same place at the same time and sitting in little rows and memorizing facts is a really old school method of school. It's basically made to make compliant factory workers and soldiers.
Yes. It's completely outdated, and you go to your class. It's almost like summer camp for 4 years when you go to college, and then you get that piece of paper that everybody says you're supposed to have. Some people talk about meritocracy, on the left as if it were a bad thing, but that's so counterintuitive to me. How can it be a bad system where the better you do at something, the more benefits you have? It seems like intuitively that's the way everything should work. The more you work, the better you do, the better your life is. That's the way. You can't get rid of that. It's inherent in nature.
You're listening to the Freedom Feens Podcast. Available at FEENS.
So, you know how one of the arguments against LibPair is always, but if you didn't have enough money to pay for the fire department, your house would burn to the ground. Which is, first of all, we've debunked that. It wouldn't be that way for different reasons. First of all, somebody would come put it out and bill you later. But secondly, the government is doing that already. We saw with FEMA in Texas, they were keeping volunteer firemen out because they weren't FEMA firemen.
Right.
And now here's this article in SF Gate. Rural residents protest new fire protection fee. State plans to impose annual $150 assessment.
Right, because it's something that they don't get to choose. You pay it no matter what, right?
Yeah, and I don't know that this is a thing of if you don't pay it, they'll let your house burn down. I think it's more like if you don't pay it, it looks like if you don't pay it, they'll come take your house.
Right, yeah. You get a fine, and then you're in default, and then they add a bunch of late fees, and they say you owe us this money, and the whole rigmarole that happens when you decide not to pay something that the state is forcing you to pay because they've got all the guns.
Yep. Boy, there's just so much tyranny. So much tyranny.
So much tyranny. It's very, very horrible stuff.
And now, the Neema News with Neema Vedadi.
And now for your daily dose of nanny-statism in our daily segment, Tyranny Today.
Tyranny Today.
Did you see this one? Boy disciplined after waving gun-shaped pizza slice.
No? How did he get a gun-shaped pizza? Did he eat away at it till it looks like a gun?
Yes.
Right. Wow, talk about zero tolerance.
Yeah, it was in, where was this? Tennessee.
Right.
Nashville.
The pizza itself was probably more unsafe than a gun.
Yeah, there you go. And it was provided by his school with no choice. Yep. And he was punished by silent lunch for 6 days.
Silent lunch? What's that? You're not allowed to talk?
It sounds like a Brave New World thing, because, being alone is supposed to be bad,
right,
so
right.
they punish you by making you be alone while you eat. It's like solitary, but just...
I wouldn't mind that. I'd like a little peace and quiet when I eat my lunch.
His father said, "We don't have a gun in the house. He plays with lightsabers. He's a big Star Wars fan."
Because, of course, a piece of light that can chop somebody to bits is so much less violent than a gun.
Yeah. So here's another one. Cops want radar gun type technology to catch cell phone use by drivers.
How are they going to make that work?
Well, they're actually looking at trying to have a national ban on cell phones and texting. But even the cops admit it would be tough to enforce. I'm thinking about like rural Wyoming where you don't see a car. You could see a car coming. There's so few cars.
Oh, yeah. Speeding is so easy in Wyoming. I used to speed down the highway going 100 miles an hour regularly between Casper and Riverton. And all you do is when you see a headlight, you just slow down back to 70. You're good to go because you only see headlights, every 20 minutes, if that?
The largest service the government seems to provide is reminding you that you can't live without government.
Is that a quote or is that just something you're coming up with?
I came up with that. I like it. This has been on our notes for a while. I haven't gotten around to it. New York City Police Department, I saw them on Fox News saying they have the right to shoot down a commercial jet out of the air.
Yes, I do remember that. And then people were trying to find out if that means they have the ability to. And the department was kind of vague on that because in order to do that, they'd need either some kind of surface-to-air missile or fighter jet, right? I mean,
the NYPD might have that. I don't know.
I wouldn't put it past them, especially with, the militarization of police forces everywhere. And obviously, the NYPD would be the biggest in the country. So I could definitely see how they act like a mini military.
So have we talked about Obama asking Iran to return the drone?
Yeah, I don't know if we talked about it on the cast. I think I might have talked about it with you. I've definitely heard about it and read about it. I'm guessing...
I like Jon Stewart's take on it. He says, the balls on this guy. It's like calling up your best friend and saying, "Hey, Tony, I was over at your house f***ing your wife and I left my shoes. Can you FedEx them to me?"
Stewart said that, huh?
Yeah.
That's hilarious. Yeah.
Well, maybe not your best friend, but yeah.
Very apt. No, good point. Has Iran said what they are doing with the drone yet? Were they able to...
They're violating it over and over. I don't know. They're just posing with it in a warehouse with a bunch of American flags that have
with skulls instead of stars.
Yeah, which what they're probably going to do is give it to China or Russia to reverse engineer it and then share the technology.
Right.
Well done, America. Yeah, we were talking about the American flag with the skulls for stars being reminiscent of art by the artist Winston Smith. Great name. It's from 1984. Winston Smith did all the art for the dead Kennedys back in the 70s and 80s.
Right, and I don't know the timing on this, but I do know that I guess it's a meme before memes were invented, but Iran had that kind of imagery, right after the revolution, the Islamic Revolution in 1979. In fact, they have a big mural on one of their buildings that is a vertical American flag. The stars are skulls, and then the stripes are trails of bombs falling.
Well, the first Dead Kennedys record came out in 78.
Yeah, so it could be.
Yeah.
Although I think when Ayatollah Khomeini took over the country, he probably banned Dead Kennedy's albums and records.
Although, stuff gets in. I mean, I remember talking when I was in the former East Germany, I think it was Magdeburg, was the name of the city, maybe. When I was touring in 2004 with the DIY or Die movie, I was talking to a guy who was about my age, who'd grown up in East Germany when it was communist. And he said, yeah, we used to go to the church to listen to rock and roll music. They let us listen to church. And I'm like, are you religious? And he's like, no, I'm an atheist. I've always been an atheist. But the church was the place to hang out. They had a little youth center, and the police never came in and hassled them because it was a church. And, we'd get down there and make cassette copies of other people's cassette copies. And, drink soda that the church provided.
Right. There's always ways to get around the bans. And that's why all the bands do is
bring out the best and brightest to go around it.
Right, exactly. Of course, that's all energy and opportunity cost by the best and brightest that could be put to things like making society better instead of trying to, well, I guess it does make society better to get...
I mean, when you think about it, the internet is really a cow out of the barn, and they're trying to put the cow back in the barn now by trying to figure out ways to censor it, because the internet, by design, is made to route around censorship. The fact is, the United States Army invented the internet. There's a common misnomer that they invented it to allow communication if a city was hit by a nuclear bomb. That's not true. It was just basically in case things were out in one city for any reason, it would route around it automatically. Because before that, electronic communications worked in a linear fashion, from city to city to city in a chain, and if one of the links in the chain was out, everybody could not communicate.
Right.
But they came up with the idea of sort of a web-like structure of nodes connecting several places to other nodes, to where if one was out, it would route around it automatically. The misnomer that it was invented to be able to route around a city being nuked was some early computer scientist said, this is great, it's bulletproof, it could even survive one city being nuked.
Okay. So it's sort of a misconception. But really, I don't like to say things like the internet was invented, especially not by the army. I mean, maybe the concept was used by the army, and maybe they were the first to come up with the concept. But it's really evolved into something more than I think they wanted it to be. Like you say, it's a cow out of the barn.
Well, a lot of it involved academia, too. It was the army in conjunction with a lot of really smart math grad students. And like I said, a lot of times it was the people who were working on it early on in the 60s were people who were working for the military to avoid having to go to Vietnam and get shot at.
Right.
And a lot of times it was people who were like students who graduated and they were like 25 years old, but they were still at the university working because the army was making them.
Right.
So I think it would have come up, I think in LibPair, it would have come up sooner and better, is what you're saying. I mean, the Army did have a hand in it. And, the Navy single-handedly invented Tor. Although I don't know about single-handedly, they probably worked on the shoulders of giants using encryption ideology that was come up with by non-military people.
Right. Single-handedly and better. Yeah, when you say LibPair, it would have been better. I think the better part would have been, I mean, right now what we're seeing with the SOPA thing is, the U.S. does have some sort of control because they do control the DNS stuff.
Yeah, if it come up in LibPair, and it is being tweaked in parallel by crypto-anarchists, but if it had come up in LibPair, the United States government would not have the domain name registry control.
Exactly.
Or the top-level DNS control.
Right.
You're listening to the Freedom Fiends Podcast, available from freedomfiends.com. That's FreedomFeens.com.
So one other thing I wanted to bring up before we go, because I told my wife I'd sort of crowdsource this and see if there's sort of a liberty angle here. We might have kids soon. It's our plan eventually to have some kids. And, when Christmas time comes around, I always remember, Santa Claus and believing in that. Do you think it's a bad thing or a good thing for libertarians to indulge their kids in the myth of Santa Claus? And along with that, Tooth Fairy, Easter Bunny, etc.
Interesting that you bring this up. I've been telling people lately they should not do that. Did you know that?
I did not know that. I was thinking myself that it wasn't a good idea. My wife was very adamant that she thinks it's a good idea. She had some arguments that were intriguing to me.
She thinks it's a good idea to let them believe that there's a Santa Claus?
Right. And, when I bring up the argument that, I don't like to lie to people, especially my kids, she was saying, well, you don't beat them over the head with it. You play along. It's play, and play is important to humanity, and I do believe in that play is important. And she also says, my argument was, it sort of teaches them to believe in the lies that authority tells you. And she was like, no, it teaches them that people who you think are authority don't always believe them, because what they say, what you think the world might be like, what the authority says the world might be like, could be completely false. So her argument is that
No, I don't like that argument. I'd love to crowdsource this. I'd love to hear other people's opinion on that. I think that it's a really bad idea. And actually, Stefan Molyneux recently did a podcast largely on this topic. Did you hear it?
No, I will go back and listen to that.
His take on it, and this really makes a lot of sense to me. I'm just going to distill it down to what I got out of it, which may include some of my own thought on it. Basically, it's a really bad idea because it teaches your kids
that you're the liar?
That you're the liar. Yeah, yes. And I don't think they can later separate, well, authority figures may lie. I mean, I would teach a kid, and I did teach my kid, Santa Claus is not real. It's a fiction made up that people believe and play. And you can still have the component of playing is good. They don't believe that, you don't want them to believe everything they say in movies. You tell them that it's fiction, it's play. People write stories.
Right.
The guy dressed as Santa in the mall is playing a role. And I think it's really, really bad because, it kind of devastated me when I found out there wasn't a Santa, and it was really young. It was like 4. As I remember, the way I found it out was we went to 2 different malls and they both had a Santa. And my mother gave me some half-assed explanation of like, well, Santa's really busy, so he has other Santas helping him. And I'm like, no, what? Tell me the truth.
Right, yeah. And I think the way the individual came across that truth really affects how they think about it for their kids. And with my wife, she was saying, she sort of knew that Santa wasn't real. She doesn't ever remember actually believing in it, but she enjoyed playing along and being like, oh yeah, quote unquote Santa, wink, wink.
Well, then it sounds like she figured out it wasn't real, but not all kids would do that.
Right.
It sounds like in the back of her head, she knew it wasn't real, but I don't think you can trust all kids in all scenarios to believe that.
Right. And for me personally, it was more like your sense. It was completely opposite from the way she experienced it. I remember I had an arch enemy when I was that age. Maybe a little young to have an arch enemy, but I had a kid who I had told a secret about me seeing this girl naked, this girl that was a friend of mine. And, we were kids. We were like 7 or something. So it was just kids doing
That's illegal now. They recently, some kid 8-year-old had to register as a sex offender for playing doctor with his 7-year-old friend.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's insane. Well, anyway, that's a whole new tyranny today that we could get into. But he blackmailed me. He said, I would tell your parents unless you give me Spider-Man the game for Sega Genesis. So I ended up giving him Spider-Man the game for Sega Genesis. And he became my arch enemy from that point on. He was the one who broke the news to me that Santa wasn't real. He said, your parents are lying to you. Santa isn't real. And so I had to have that from my mortal enemy was telling me the truth, and my parents were lying to me. The people who I believed in and I trusted were telling me a lie, and the person who I hated most in the world and hated me the most in the world told me the truth. And that really threw a sucker punch at me.
Do you have any desire to hunt this guy down and torment him now?
No, I don't care now. We were just kids doing stupid kid stuff. I don't hold grudges. But from that point on, I never really thought about it again, I guess, until now that I'm at the age where I might have my own family soon. And I was just wondering, what will I do in that situation?
Yeah, so, I think it's a really bad idea. I think it teaches kids that their parents are liars.
Yeah, and I think that was my initial response. But I would like the Fiends to weigh in on this if they can, their thoughts on Santa Claus, the Tooth Fairy, Easter Bunny, etc., and how you deal with that.
Word.
Worms. So is that where we end it, Michael, or do we have any other tyranny or freedom fixes?
I want to thank a few people for donations. We got a $10 donation from Bruce. Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you, Bruce.
And we got a $5 a month ongoing donation from Troilius.
Oh, yeah. That's what I like to hear. Ongoing.
And people can go and make donations and help us. They can also help us by downloading the Alexa toolbar and installing it. One thing I wanted to say was that if SOPA passes, you can still legally and with no worries share Freedom Fiends and the Guns and Weed movie because they're both Creative Commons.
Ah, yes, very good point. Another workaround. So with the SOPA thing, does that not give them any power to go after anything as long as it is Creative Commons or as long as nobody holds rights to something on that site?
I don't know, man. It's so vague. I mean, how many bills have you read? It's a 500-page bill.
Yeah, good point. And you never really know until they do it. That's why it's really not a rule of law type of thing. It's whoever actually reads the text, B, of who reads the text, who can decipher it because it's in legalese, and C, how many different ways are there to decipher it if you can understand
the people who
legalese.
write them don't even read them, or the people who bring them to Congress don't read them. They're written by lobbyists. So yeah, here we are at episode 45. Never thought we'd get that far.
You didn't? I sort of thought we would.
I don't know. I thought we would, but it's pretty
You were
cool.
always worried about what's called podfade, where, a podcast starts up and they're really gung-ho about doing it regularly, and then they're just like, I gotta go play Battlefield 3, or gotta go watch Fox News. I don't have time to podcast.
Yep. Well, the most episodes of a podcast I've ever done was 184.
Oh, wow. Which podcast was that?
That was the Submission and Coffee podcast.
Well, obviously, that's a fun one.
Yeah. Well, it got kind of tedious after a while. You can only record yourself having sex and then talking about it so many times.
Okay. Fair enough.
I think I'm having more fun with this, at least at this point. All right, man.
All right.
Worms.
Peace.
And now, for your dancing and dining pleasure, Government is a Collective Hallucination by Right Arm of Wyoming.
Census worker was found hanging from a tree in Kentucky with the word "Fed" written on his chest.
Government is collecting hallucinations based on force. Forced cooperation with roots in indoctrination of kids.
Cradle to the grave, they want to own you. Socialist indoctrination, own you. Can't let you be free, own you. Socialist indoctrination, own you. Unconstitutional, own you. Maybe the feds will supply each senseless worker with his or her own Fedgoon bodyguard to ensure their safety, but actually to make sure all the questions are answered. Remember, the census is how they knew where to find the Japanese to intern them in camps in World War II.
Government is collecting hallucinations based on force. Forced cooperation with roots in indoctrination of kids.
This hanging may be remembered as the first shot in Civil War 2.0. This one won't be about race. Not that the last one entirely was. This one will be about state rights and rejecting tyranny. Like the last one mostly was. The feds, they want to own you. From the cradle to the grave, they want to own you. Turn this into England, where steak knives get you 4 years in prison, declaw and disarm until they can tax you 110%. I think and fear that the U.S. federal government is tending more and more toward adopting international law over the U.S. Constitution.
Government is collecting hallucinations based on force. Forced cooperation with roots in indoctrination of kids.
Thomas Jefferson said, "Resistance to tyrants is obedience to God." I like that. I like it a lot. So let me ask you this, my young friends. Will history repeat itself? Will you go quietly to the showers? Or will you risk your life when the moment comes?
Government is collecting hallucinations based on force. Forced cooperation with roots in indoctrination of kids.
against brother, son against mother. I hate that it may come to this. We're generally peaceful people, but good people can only be pushed so far. And wouldn't you rather die on your feet than live on your knees?
Hello, Freedom Fiends. It's your boy Dean from the U.S. Get the U.S. out my bloodstream. I owe me and that include endorphins. No one won't ask permission and I won't say please. Freedom fans, one fact that I gotta make clear is...
The Freedom Fiends podcast is covered by a Creative Commons Attribution Share-alike 3.0 license. Do what you want with it and spread it around. Tell 2 friends. Make copies. Email it to everyone you know. Go on the site and comment. This is a conversation. Every Friday night, we'll have an exciting new episode where Michael W. Dean and Neema Vedadi weave their own unique take on the way the world works and how to find your place in it. Available from freedomfeens.com. That's FREEDOMFEENS.com.
Freedom Fiends is proudly syndicated by Alterati.com and the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
Subscribe and tell 2 friends.
And remember, the only power they have is the power you allow them.